I was elected to represent the citizens of Pittsburgh, not Paris.
All right, well, try telling that to pro-Paris deal protesters gathering outside the White House as we speak. Griff Jenkins in the thick of it. Hey, Griff.
Hey, Neil, how are you? It's quiet out here and certainly a nice day. You see mostly tourists out here. The only thing remaining is a wake-up clock to the climate crisis, a sign here, stay in Paris agreement. But let me tell you, right at 3 o'clock when the president was withdrawing from that Paris Accord, it got really, really loud. A dozen or so protesters. You can hear from this video we shot right at the time the president was pulling out. Take a look at this tape. The protesters are a conglomerate of environmental groups and progressive groups. So you have everybody from the Sierra Club to the Center for American Progress, and their message is clear. They say, Neil, that the withdrawal is bad for the climate, bad for the planet, and also bad for business, according to the way they see things. And they're actually really outraged. One protester telling me, I said, what would you say if you could go across and talk to the president? She said, I would call him a climate loser. A play, of course, on what we saw from the president's trip overseas. And I spoke with one of the protesters that you see being taken down that got across the police tape. Here's what David Barrows had to say. Take a listen to this.
We are outraged that this president would cook the planet, would destroy the planet. We don't know why he's doing this. If he's doing this in the name of jobs or the economy, he's insane.
So, Neil, again, there is another rally coming at 5 p.m. with some speakers. We're told that the DNC chairman, Tom Perez, will be here. He's already put out a statement saying that he believes this is a betrayal of future generations, calling it a failure of leadership. But look at it out here now, you know. There's only a few student protesters down there in front, and it's otherwise a pretty nice day. We're going to stay on watch for you, Neil.
All right, thank you, my friend. Be well. Griff Jenkins in the middle of all of that. And by the way, not surprisingly, Barack Obama has come out with a statement. This was his baby. He led the effort on this. And obviously not too pleased that it has not come to pass with his successor. He says the nations that remain in the Paris Agreement will be the nations that reap the benefits in jobs and industries created. Going on here, he says, I believe the United States of America should be at the front of the pack, but even in the absence of American leadership, even as this administration joins a small handful of nations that reject the future, I'm confident that our states, cities, and businesses will step up and do even more to lead the way. Our former ambassador to the United Nations, John Bolton, on that. Obviously, he's not happy about it. We're already hearing from some of those nations that have signed on to it, nearly 200 of them, that they're not happy with it. But this was pretty well telegraphed. What do you think?
Well, I think it was an excellent decision. Look, the Paris Accord is a self-licking ice cream cone. Its purpose is to exist. In the short term, it really would have had next to no effect. The danger was in the longer term. In the short term, it's a bunch of national programs that you could have devised any way you wanted. The overall effect on climate by any reputable scientific analysis is zero. And countries like India and China basically said, our program for reducing carbon emissions will begin in 2030. So the near-term effect was remote. Why would anybody agree to something like that? Because of the failure of the predecessor agreements, Kyoto and Copenhagen. What they wanted was an agreement on anything to create the foundation for what they're really interested in, which is more international control over national decision-making. This is really a global governance issue, which the Europeans just love, which Barack Obama just loved, which Donald Trump has now rejected. There are lots of economic arguments here about the effect of this agreement. To me, the overarching, ultimately most important, more than constitutional question was, do we govern ourselves here, or are we going to cede governance authority to international organizations? And that's what's been rejected.
You know, Ambassador, regardless of people's views on this particular deal and accord, some have expressed concern that it could hurt how we work with Europe, let's say, and some of these other nations on dealing with terror, on trade deals, on that sort of thing. Are you similarly concerned?
Not at all. I mean, that just is a fundamental misconception of how international diplomacy works. We've heard these arguments before. In the Bush administration, my first job was to get us out of the 1972 anti-ballistic missile treaty. Oh my God, the Europeans said. Oh my God, Joe Biden, John Kerry, Barack Obama, Chris Dodd said, it's the end of international strategic stability. We got out, nothing happened. We got out of the statute creating the International Criminal Court. Nothing happened. And nothing will happen here either, other than people will recognize we're not going to engage in this kind of blue smoke and mirrors in order to get to more international control. I think it will cause people to say, if they're serious about this, if they want to really make a difference, then they're going to have to enter into serious negotiations. The fundamental point is we could be dealing with global cooling here. If the objective were to put more carbon emissions into the atmosphere to increase the Earth's temperature, these people would be arguing for the same structures, because their overall objective is more international governance and less national sovereignty.
Real quickly, do you think the evidence is irrefutable, as President Obama did and many of these signatories onto this deal did? You mentioned about global cooling. That was a big fear about 40 years ago on the cover of Time and Newsweek, the great freeze to come. That was the consensus then. It's a different consensus now. How do you feel about that and the science on this?
Look, I'm perfectly prepared to believe that the Earth is warming. I'm perfectly prepared to believe it's largely because of man-made causes. I'm perfectly prepared to believe it's more dangerous than not. That doesn't have anything to do with the Paris Agreement. It would not reduce carbon emissions sufficiently to have a measurable effect on global warming as far as the eye could see. They're just looking at it exactly the wrong way. The better path is to allow for economic growth.
All right. Very good having you, Ambassador. Thank you very much. And to the Ambassador's point, carbon emissions and our overall levels have gone down about 15% since this deal was first transacted, having very little to do with the deal and more to the fact that we have veered into cheaper, cleaner natural gas. And that's what closed the deal, and that's what got those emissions down, having nothing to do with an accord with the rest of the world. But we shall see the fallout from all of this with Senator Mike Lee, among others, after this.